Welcome to the Chronicles of a Cheating Wife channel. A new story every day. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm back early. I didn't plan it. Things at the workshop wrapped up faster than usual, and the traffic was surprisingly light. A small mercy from fate, or maybe a gentle shove from it. Either way, I stepped into the house with my key turning too quietly in the lock, a bag of groceries in one hand, my heart not quite sure why it was beating so fast. Sometimes you sense the shift in the air before you even see what's changed. The way an animal senses a distant storm. I should have trusted that quiet alarm clanging in my chest. I set the groceries down on the kitchen counter. The clock on the wall told me I was a full hour ahead of schedule. An hour can be a lifetime. I saw the business card on the table. A name, Brian, printed in thick letters, and a number scrawled in pen. Next to it, someone had underlined Friday. My first instinct was to think, maybe it's for the bathroom repair. But my gut whispered something else entirely. I heard footsteps upstairs, a soft, almost guilty sound. Then a momentary hush. I felt a wave of something. Curiosity, dread, I still can't label it, press against my ribs. Stepping carefully, I put a hand on the banister and climbed. Each step up was a fresh ache. You know that feeling when your brain yells, stop, don't go any further. But your legs move on their own. That was me. Every footstep felt heavier, as if the floor might give way. When I reached our bedroom door, it was ajar. I saw him first, tall, muscular, wearing the Dan work shirt unbuttoned halfway. And her, my wife, Laura. She still had on her blouse, but her skirt was hiked up around her hips, and his hand was there, gripping her thigh. The look in their eyes was pure, unguarded want. They were close, bodies pressed, lips parted. I could have roared, slammed the door wide open. Maybe I should have. But I froze, stuck between shock and fury. They were laughing breathlessly, the kind of intimate laughter that always felt precious between two people in private. Seeing it now, with her hair messed from his touch, was like having a blade slide between my ribs. Brian brushed his lips against her neck, a slow trail from her jaw to her collarbone, and her head tilted back, eyes half closed. That was enough. My mouth tasted of salt and adrenaline, voice coiled in my throat. All I managed to do was push the door until it squeaked and let them see me. Let them feel the thunder about to roll. Laura's eyes flew open. She let out a shaky gasp. Fear replaced the hunger in her expression. Brian jerked back, stumbling into the dresser, confusion etched on his face. I didn't speak. I just looked at them. The seconds stretched, harsh and silent. My hands trembled, but I refused to let the bag of groceries slip. Such a trivial detail, but it kept me grounded. I let them see the betrayal hammered across my face. Let them feel that wave of hatred and heartbreak. Then I turned on my heel, walked out, and went straight to the living room. They followed, stumbling in panic, trying to fix clothes. Laura cried my name, Michael, but it sounded hollow, a word detached from meaning. Brian didn't say anything at first. Maybe he couldn't find the right words to justify having his hands all over another man's wife. Maybe there were no right words. I set the groceries aside gently, so calmly it terrified even me. My voice came out strangely level. It's fine. I'm not going to kill anyone. Then I exhaled through my nostrils, trying to keep the anger from boiling over. You can go, I told Brian, my eyes boring into his. You can walk out of my house, and I won't stop you. He opened his mouth, searching for something that might salvage his pride. I saw the glimmer of panic in his gaze, an animal cornered by a predator. But I guess he realized there was no high ground to claim. He just nodded, grabbed his tool bag. He must have left it somewhere near the foyer, and disappeared through the front door. Every second that passed was an agonizing countdown to the explosion inside me. When the door clicked shut, Laura started trembling. She reached out, tried to clutch my wrist. I stepped back. Don't, I said, letting the word ring in the hallway. My voice almost cracked. I had to swallow the ache that was clawing up my throat. Not now. She kept trying to speak, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. Michael, please, let's talk. This isn't what you think. I felt a bitter laugh surge in my chest. I know exactly what it is, I said quietly, each syllable dripping with something darker than hatred, disgust. But sure, let's pretend. Let's pretend it's just a misunderstanding. Please, just, she choked, voice quivering. He was helping me. The bathroom is half finished and, so that's what we call it now. My smile was thin, a slash of mockery on my face. Helping. It looked like a lot more than picking out tile patterns, Laura. She started sobbing, shoulders shaking, but I felt no pity. I kept seeing his hand traveling up her thigh, the open mouth of her blouse, the flush on her cheeks. That image was seared into my mind. Like a brand. I set my jaw. Get yourself together. I said, my tone cold. I'm done for today. I'll come back when I feel like it. I turned and walked out. My legs carried me on autopilot to the garage, to my truck, ignoring her frantic footsteps behind me. The engine roared to life, and I drove off, not sure where I was going. The entire time, I heard my heart pounding so loudly it eclipsed everything else. My father's old photograph was lying in a small wooden frame on the dashboard. I keep it there for reasons I can't fully explain. Maybe I need his silent judgment. Maybe I just want to believe he's still guiding me somehow. I snatched the photo, glanced at his calm expression. The same calm I'd never again see in real life. He'd passed away years ago, but I could almost hear him now. Don't do anything stupid, son. I had to pull over because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The betrayal felt like a hot wire around my chest, cutting into me every time I breathed. Images of them together were swirling in my head. My wife, the mother of my son, pressed up against some guy she barely knew. My hand slammed against the steering wheel, and I let out a broken cry that echoed in the closed cab of my truck. Time stood still. After a while, I wiped my eyes and tried to gather what was left of my composure. It was like swallowing shattered glass. That's when I realized I needed answers. Not from her lips, because lies could slip out easily. I needed something undeniable, like a camera, a record, something. I remembered a day or two before. I'd set up a small camera in the entryway, wanting to monitor the deliveries. We'd had packages stolen before, and I thought, why not keep an eye on things? She didn't expect me to activate it so soon. Or at least she probably assumed I forgot. She was wrong. The next morning, I walked back into the house. She was waiting for me in the living room, perched on the couch, eyes red and swollen. I could tell she hadn't slept. The tension wrapped around the room like a thick fog. I didn't greet her. I just walked in, took off my jacket, and headed upstairs to the spare bedroom. She trailed behind me, voice shaking. Michael, please, can we talk about this? I paused at the threshold of the spare room. I'm not sure there's anything left to say that wouldn't taste like poison. My voice was low. But we'll talk. After I see what's on that hallway camera. You know, the one you didn't think I'd turned on. Her face blanched. I saw the flicker of panic, and then resignation. She pressed her lips together, said nothing. I opened my laptop, found the recorded files. My hand hovered over the play button. Laura stood behind me, arms folded protectively across her chest, tears threatening to spill again. I tapped the screen to skip forward, scanning the footage, an uneasy mixture of anger and dread building in my stomach. There it was, a few days back, around noon. The front door opened. Brian stepped in, wearing that same work shirt and tool belt. Laura was behind him, smiling in a way I hadn't seen her smile for me in a long while. She closed the door, and he put a hand on her waist, pulled her in for a brief kiss. Not the accidental kind. Not just a friendly peck. A kiss that said, "We've done this before. We're comfortable with it." They disappeared out of frame, presumably headed upstairs. The camera only caught them returning about an hour later, hair mussed, cheeks flushed. They shared a laugh, a quiet conversation, then he left. She waited, her eyes following him until the door shut, and only then did she exhale, a satisfied kind of sigh. She never noticed the blinking light of the camera. I felt something bitter choke the back of my throat. It was unbelievably surreal, like watching a stranger's life. But that was my home, my wife, my humiliating secret laid bare. Trust, an ugly weapon in my chest. I realized how easily she'd wielded it against me. She'd turned me into the unsuspecting bystander of my own life. I closed the laptop and stood up. She was sobbing now, trying to form words. "Michael," she began, voice ragged. "I'm sorry. It just happened. I never wanted to hurt you." I turned to her, my heart pounding. "But you did," I said, my voice quivering at the edges. "And it didn't just happen. You knew what you were doing. You planned it, let it grow, let it take root here." I tapped my foot on the floor, as if the house itself was complicit. She shook her head vigorously, but her words faltered. "It's complicated." I felt alone. "You were always so absorbed in your workshop, your old routines. We never talked anymore. That's your defense." My voice rose, harsher than I intended. "You cheat because I was busy, because I didn't fill your days with endless attention." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "It's not that complicated, Laura. You wanted something new, something exciting, and you thought I'd never find out." She took a trembling step toward me. I didn't move. "I still love you," she whispered, eyes full of tears. "We can fix this. Please." Her words twisted the knife deeper. I felt my body quake with anger. "Don't you dare ask me to pretend it's all fine. Don't you dare." I slammed my fist against the doorframe, and the sound reverberated in the small room. I could feel my voice wanting to break, but I forced myself to continue. "Right now, I can't look at you without seeing his hands all over your skin." She started sobbing again. For a split second, I thought of reaching out. Old habits die hard. But the rage held me back. I brushed past her, heading downstairs, ignoring her strangled cries to wait, just wait. In the kitchen, I forced down a cup of coffee. It tasted like acid. She appeared in the doorway, hugging her arms around herself, tears streaming down her cheeks. I recognized a certain terror in her eyes. The same look she had when I first caught them. I pinned her with a look. "You'll call them. You'll tell him never to set foot in this house again. I don't want to see him. I don't want to speak to him." I hesitated, then added, "And after that, we'll figure out how to handle the next step." "What's the next step?" Her voice was tiny. I took a long breath. "Divorce. Probably." I watched how the word hit her like a slap. "But first, I want a DNA test." She frowned in confusion. "What?" I stared at my cup. "Our son. I need to know if he's mine." The words came out blunt, each one flaring with resentment. "You've been lying to me for how long?" "I can't be sure about anything now." Her reaction was instant. Indignation, horror. "Michael, he's your son." "I swear. I would never." "You'd never lie." I challenged, arching an eyebrow. "Because you're lying right now, or you lied then. Either way, everything's tainted." My voice cracked a bit, but I steadied it. "I'll do the test. If he's mine, at least that part of my life is still whole." She pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming. I could see the guilt warring with desperation, but I'd made my statement. I left her standing there, voice lost in the emptiness of the hallway. I filed the paperwork for the paternity test the next day. We had to schedule an appointment at a clinic. She insisted she'd come with me, that it was all a farce. Maybe a part of me hoped she was telling the truth, that at least the boy I raised was mine. But suspicion is a heavy cloak, and I wore it day and night. During the week, I slept in the spare bedroom, or sometimes on the couch. She tiptoed around me like a ghost in our own house. When we did speak, I kept my tone calm, almost mild, but every sentence dripped with a low-level venom. I wanted her to feel the same sting I felt. That might make me cruel, but heartbreak can twist a man into something he barely recognizes. I started marking days on a calendar, little crosses for every 24 hours I spent in that house with her, living in this shadow. 27 years of marriage. I stared at those numbers, trying to pinpoint the exact moment everything went wrong. Was it last year? 5 years ago? Longer? The not knowing was another brand of torture. Meanwhile, she tried to salvage normalcy. She cooked, tidied up, pretended to watch TV. I heard her crying in the bathroom at night, the muffled sobs echoing through the door. A part of me wanted to burst in and hold her, but the bigger part, the one that remembered how she moaned under Brian's touch, wouldn't let me. Instead, I turned up the volume on my own solitude. Eventually, the DNA results arrived. I took the envelope and locked myself in the garage. My hand shook as I tore it open. A wave of relief, mixed with sorrow, crashed over me when I read. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. My son was mine. Something in my chest loosened, just a fraction. I stepped back into the house, the letter in my grip. She stood by the kitchen table, eyes full of questions. "Well?" she asked softly. "He's mine," I said, staring at her with a strange mixture of gratitude and hurt. "Thank you for not destroying that, at least." She winced as if I'd struck her. "Michael, I love both of you. I'd never." I cut her off with a raised hand. "Stop. No more. I have what I needed." My voice dropped lower. "Now I'll talk to my lawyer. I'm done with this farce." She tried to speak, but I brushed past her. I realized how vicious my words had become, but I wasn't in the mood to tone them down. Every time she said, "I love you," it felt like she was spitting on the grave of our marriage. One night, after a long day at the workshop, I found a small business card again on the kitchen table. Brian's. It had a note scribbled on the back in Laura's hand. He asked about finishing the bathroom. Wanted to schedule a day. I stared at it, a dull rage forming. Was it desperation or stupidity that drove her to even mention him again? Or maybe she was trying to show honesty, to prove she wouldn't hide anything. But all I felt was the old disgust curling inside me. I snapped a photo of the card on my phone, more out of reflex than reason. Then I tossed it in the trash. I said nothing to her about it. Let her wonder what I was thinking. After dinner, I went straight to the spare room and closed the door. She knocked lightly a few minutes later. When I opened, she had tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," I thought. "Maybe you wanted to see it. Know that I'm not contacting him secretly." My voice came out low and cold. "I don't want anything from him, or from you about him. Is that clear?" She swallowed, nodded and slunk away, a woman carrying the weight of her own mistakes. Maybe that should have stirred pity, but my heart was stone. I started checking the footage from the hallway camera nightly. It became an obsession. I watched old recordings, rewound them, analyzing every nuance. What time she came home, which days he'd show up. I traced the pattern of her betrayal. The times she told me she'd be running errands or getting groceries, but in truth, she was orchestrating their little rendezvous. My chest tightened with every piece of evidence, every puzzle piece sliding painfully into place. The camera didn't catch them in the bedroom, but it caught them leaving that bedroom. The guilty smiles, the whispers, the occasional quiet kisses if they stayed in view too long. Nothing pornographic, but it was enough to choke me with rage. The trust I'd once believed in felt like a loaded gun, fired straight into my gut. As the weeks went on, I sank into a dulled routine. Work in my father's old shoe repair workshop, which I'd expanded to crafting custom boots. Come home, avoid Laura, mark another day off on the calendar. That small act of crossing off a box gave me a grim sense of progress, like I was counting down to my final break from this place. At last, my lawyer told me everything was ready. "You can file for divorce now," he said over the phone. "Given the circumstances, you'll likely get a favorable settlement." I stared at the walls of the spare room. Photos of us decorated the hallway. Smiling vacation shots, happy illusions of a life that felt so far away. I don't need anything but clarity, I muttered to myself. Then, to the lawyer, I'll sign when I'm ready. Later that evening, I poured myself a glass of whiskey, something I rarely did, and sat across from Laura at the kitchen table. She looked up, startled that I initiated any form of contact. I'm filing, I said evenly, swirling the amber liquid in the glass. It's over. I just wanted to tell you face to face. She pressed her lips tight, tears brimming instantly. Michael, she whispered, I know I don't have a right to ask for mercy, but can't we talk about mercy? I said, letting the word hang. You were merciless when you lied to my face, week after week. But I'm not going to shout at you. I'm not going to break your dishes or drag you through the mud in front of neighbors. I'm simply done. I paused, letting a small breath steady me. I don't have the energy for a final argument. I just want you to tell your family, tell them the truth. I'll tell mine, and we'll separate. She bowed her head, sobbing quietly. I stood up, drained the whiskey, and put the glass down with a sharp clink. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I'll stay in a motel until the divorce is finalized. She wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. Where are you going? I glanced at the duffel bag I'd already packed. North. By the lake, maybe. I found a place to rent until I figure it out. That's all you need to know. It was almost midnight, but I couldn't sleep. The reality of departure weighed on me. I stepped into my old workshop, in the corner of the garage, and looked around. The rows of tools, bits of leather scraps, the half-finished boots I'd been crafting. I stroked the smooth leather, remembering how Dad taught me to stitch when I was barely tall enough to reach the table. I realized I only wanted two things: the photo of my father and the boots I'd made for myself last year. Everything else in this house could stay behind. I went upstairs to our closet. No, to her closet, the one we used to share. Her clothes hung neatly, perfumed with the faint smell that used to comfort me. Now it felt foreign. I found the boots on the shelf. As I pulled them down, I knocked over a small shoebox. It tumbled to the floor, the lid popping off. Inside were cards, letters, some from me, some from relatives, and one from Brian. My eyes flicked across a line. Can't wait for Friday. Miss your laugh. My heart hammered in my ears again, that same fury returning like a wave. I slammed the box shut, picked it up, and dropped it into the trash bin. No second thought, no curiosity about how many notes from him might be lurking inside. I'd seen enough. I took the boots and left, fighting the urge to throw something, to break something. Instead, I marched down the stairs, out to the garage, and locked myself in. The house was silent, but I sensed her listening from behind her bedroom door. Let her hear the door slam. Let that be my parting word. The next morning at dawn, I loaded my truck. Laura stood on the driveway, arms wrapped around her waist, looking like she wanted to say something but couldn't form the words. I glanced at her once, felt a fleeting pang of regret for what we used to be. Then I turned the ignition, and the truck rumbled to life. I drove away. I didn't look back. That was how 27 years ended. Not with a gunshot, not with a dramatic showdown, but with the slow crack of trust culminating in an irreversible break. Life by the lake was quiet, too quiet, at times. I rented a small cabin with a workshop out back. The scent of pine and cold water greeted me every morning. I started crossing days off a new calendar, but now they felt different, like days of healing or forgetting. I couldn't decide. I poured myself into my craft. I took orders for custom shoes online, hammered leather until my hands ached, anything to keep my mind off the ghosts of betrayal. Some nights, I read old messages from my son. He was in college now, busy with classes and a part-time job. I hadn't told him the full story, just that his mother and I were separating. At some point, we'd sit down and talk. But not yet. I wasn't ready. Laura texted me sometimes. Long messages filled with pleas and apologies, updates about random life details. I almost never replied. On a good day, I'd send a short, "I'm alive. Don't worry." That was the best I could do. One evening, I got word through a mutual friend that she wasn't sleeping well, that her heart pounded like a hammer at night, guilt or regret tormenting her. Serves her right, was my first cold thought. Then I hated myself for how little sympathy I had left. But that's what betrayal does. It drains you of warmth. I found a sense of rhythm in the routine. Wake up early, walk to the shoreline. Let the crisp morning air fill my lungs. Then back to the cabin, brew coffee, and immerse myself in the workshop. The ring of my hammer and the hum of my sewing machine were like therapy. Sometimes, though, my mind wandered to Brian, his strong arms, his confident grin. I'd compare myself to him, dissecting the ways I fell short. My anger roiled. My voice would catch sometimes, in those solitary moments. I'd talk to my father's picture, telling him how I'd been fooled, how trust can be used like a weapon. I'd say it out loud. "You told me love was worth fighting for, Dad. But what do I fight for now, when the trust is gone?" The silence never gave me an answer. Weeks blurred into months. The divorce papers were signed and processed. I received an official letter, finalized. That was it. A whole lifetime, boiled down to a court decree. I drank that night, but it didn't feel like a celebration, more like a quiet funeral. In the morning, I realized I needed closure for my own sanity. So I wrote a single letter, addressing it to her parents and mine, basically a formal statement. I ended the marriage because of systematic lies. The relationship is closed. No anger in the words, no drama. Just the facts. I mailed it, sealed up in an envelope. That felt oddly liberating, as if I'd cast off the final weight of explaining myself. Then came the day I decided to visit my mother and sister. They lived out of state, but I owed them a face-to-face explanation. I took the old highway route, the same roads I used to travel in my youth. On the way, I passed through a small town, saw a sign advertising custom furniture. On impulse, I pulled in. The shop was quiet, smelled of sawdust and varnish. A man about my age stood behind the counter, looking bored. He gave me a nod. "Morning. Can I help you?" I walked around the neat arrangement of chairs and tables. "Just looking," I said. Then I paused, pressing a hand over the smooth surface of a finished table. "Beautiful work." He smiled. "Thanks. Been doing it most of my life." I wondered if he'd ever had to watch his wife stray with some other man. Would he look so calm if he had? Probably not. I shook the thoughts away. I noticed a small sign, "Looking for part-time help." Something in me lit up. I realized that even in my numbness, I still hungered for creation, for working with my hands. "You still looking?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, I could use another pair of skilled hands. Hard to find people who actually know craftsmanship these days." "You have experience with wood?" "Leather, mostly. Shoemaking, repairs, some carpentry with my dad, but that was ages ago." He assessed me quietly. "You seem like the type who pays attention to detail." I almost laughed. If only he knew how one detail, the shift in Laura's behavior, had changed my life. "Yeah," I said. "I do." We talked wages, schedules. Before I left, I scrawled my number on a scrap of paper. He told me he'd call. "What's your name, by the way?" he asked. I hesitated. "Michael." My last name felt heavy, so I just left it at that. Driving away, I realized that for the first time in months, I'd taken a step into something that wasn't overshadowed by betrayal. A small flicker of hope, perhaps. Laura sent me a long text the next day, paragraphs about how she was losing sleep, her heart hammered with guilt, how she missed me and wished we could talk. The final line read, "I've ruined everything. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I stared at it for a long time. The old anger coiled in my stomach, but it was weaker now, like a snake that had finally grown tired. I typed a response. I have nothing to say. Then I erased it, typed "Please take care," and almost sent that. But in the end, I left it unsent. Silence was kinder, perhaps, than opening wounds all over again. Time doesn't heal, not really. It just erases the sharp edges, little by little. Some nights, I dream about the moment I first saw them in the bedroom. I wake up in a cold sweat, panting, as if reliving the horror. But the days, they move on. I keep crossing them off on the calendar. And each cross is a small reminder that I'm still here, carrying on. Sometimes I stand at the edge of the lake, watching the sun rise over the distant pines, the water reflecting golden light. In those moments, I feel a calmness, like the world is offering me a place to rest. The pain is still there, a dull ache, but it's not the raw, festering wound it once was. I remind myself, trust is like a weapon. It can be turned against you, used to cut you deeper than any knife. But if you never trust again, you give the traitor even more power. Weeks after the divorce was finalized, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Laura. I hesitated before opening it. In the end, curiosity won. The letter was handwritten, her neat script carefully formed. "Michael, I know you might not read this, or you might throw it away. I can't blame you. But I wanted to say again how sorry I am. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope someday, for your own peace, you can find a way to let go of the anger. I miss the life we had, and I miss the man you were. I hate myself for doing this to you. If you ever need anything, anything at all, just call me. With regret and love, Laura." I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer. I didn't tear it up, but I didn't reply either. I felt a flare of old emotions. She claimed to love me, but her actions said otherwise. Maybe she truly did regret it. The question was, does regret fix what's broken? Could she put the pieces back together? I doubted it. I found myself behind a wheel again, heading into the city for some supplies. The memory of Brian's business card, that broad grin, the easy confidence, everything about him still haunted me. I'd fantasized about confronting him, letting my fists fly, but that urge had faded. Maybe vengeance would feel good for a moment, but it wouldn't fill the void left behind. I stopped at a roadside diner. A middle-aged waitress came to refill my coffee. "Haven't seen you around here," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "Just passing through," I replied, forcing a polite nod. "Moved out to a cabin near the lake." She poured the coffee, gave a gentle laugh. "That's a nice quiet spot. My aunt used to say, the lake hears all your secrets, but never tells a soul. Must be peaceful." "Yeah," I said, allowing a faint curve of my lips. "It is." She lingered a moment, as though she sensed the sadness trailing after me, then drifted off to another table. I sipped the hot coffee, recalling how I used to share silent mornings with Laura at our old kitchen table, the sunlight slanting in. I realized how long it had been since I felt genuine warmth from another person. Not pity. Not forced politeness. Just a small, human connection. I paid the bill and walked out, feeling the wind stir around me. The day had turned cloudy, a storm threatening to roll in from the west. I felt the same tension in the air as that first day, when I came back early and everything changed. I clenched my jaw and told myself, that storm already passed. Don't dwell on it. The next few months saw me building a simpler life. The furniture shop owner finally called. We worked out a deal. I'd help with some custom upholstery for chairs, maybe do some collaborative pieces that combined wood and leather. It wasn't a fortune, but it gave me purpose. My mother and sister visited me once at the cabin. It was strange to host them in such a small place, but we made do. They never pried too deep about Laura, though the question hung in the air. My mother only took my hand at one point, patted it, and said, "I'm here, son. Anytime." That simple statement meant more to me than any cliché about moving on. One morning, out of nowhere, I got a call from an unknown number. I debated letting it ring, but something nudged me to answer. "Hello," I said cautiously. There was a pause, then a voice I recognized all too well. Brian. Hey. It's me, Brian. My pulse kicked up. How'd you get this number? I asked, my voice going quiet and dangerous. He cleared his throat. Laura gave it to me a while back. For a job reference. We never actually spoke, but I still had it in my phone. Look, I wanted to. He fumbled for words. You what? I asked, feeling the old anger coil. He sighed. I wanted to apologize, man to man. It was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I couldn't let it hang there forever. An apology. After all this time, my jaw tightened. And why now? He hesitated. Truth is, I'm not proud of myself. I messed up. I know that doesn't help you much, but I wanted you to know. I'm sorry. I stared at the worn floorboards under my feet, thoughts swirling. An apology from the man who destroyed my marriage. Part of me wanted to hang up. Another part was curious, waiting to see if he'd say more. He swallowed. If you ever need anything, repairs, I don't know. I'm around. I know it won't change what happened, but maybe it can help me sleep better. My tongue felt thick. I don't need anything from you, I said, voice shaking with suppressed fury. I don't want your pity, your guilt, or your services. I want you to stay away from me. Yeah, he said quietly. I get that. I almost ended the call. Then the words poured out, surprising even me. You took something from me that I'll never get back. So keep your apology. He sighed. A heavy exhale. I understand. I hung up. My heart pounded like it did that first day. But the difference was, I wasn't stumbling in shock now. I felt a certain clarity, a final closure. The door had slammed shut on that chapter, and I would keep it locked. A few days later, I sat in my workshop, finishing a custom pair of boots. The smell of leather and polish enveloped me. I pressed the sole firmly, hammered the nails in. Each strike resonated with the steady beating of my heart. Sweat beaded on my forehead. When I stood, wiping my brow, I caught sight of my father's old photo pinned to the wall. His quiet smile was a reminder of the man I used to be, the man I'm still trying to be in the aftermath. I breathed out, a long and ragged sigh. Time doesn't heal, Dad, I murmured. It just erases what we can't carry anymore, piece by piece. The sun was setting, sending warm hues across the workbench. I stepped outside, boots in hand, to watch the fading light. A crisp breeze off the lake ruffled my hair. In the distance, the water shimmered with the last rays of orange and pink. I closed my eyes, letting the air wash over me, letting the memory of that bedroom scene fade to the background. It would never fully vanish, but maybe, over enough nights like this, it would lose some of its power. I recalled the final note I'd left in that envelope to our families. Reason. Systematic lies. No theatrics, no desperate pleas for understanding. Just the truth, as bare and cold as it is. If I had to do it again, would I handle it differently? Maybe. But I'm not a man who rewinds and rewrites. I'm the man who lives with the consequences. The crisp wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. I gazed up at the sky, feeling a deep ache in my chest, the residue of betrayal and regret. But I also felt something else, the faint hum of possibility. I inhaled, exhaled. I set the boots down on the step, took one last look at the darkening horizon, and walked back inside. The cabin lights were warm, the air quiet. I sank into the old armchair, my muscles tired, my mind drifting. The guilt, the anger, the heartbreak, they were all part of me now. But in the hush of my new life, I realized I still had a choice. To let it crush me or to learn to breathe through it. I rubbed my hands over my face, remembering how my voice had cracked when I told her it was over. How I'd felt no relief in that moment, only emptiness. But here, alone in this small cabin, the emptiness wasn't devouring me. It was slowly reshaping me, forging me into someone who understood what it meant to keep going after the world fell apart. The phone buzzed with another text. I glanced at it. Probably Laura or someone checking on me. I didn't pick it up. Tonight, I'd allow myself the quiet. Tomorrow, maybe I'd reply. Maybe not. But either way, the day would come. The sun would rise over the lake, and I'd lace up my boots and keep walking forward. Trust had been a blade used against me, but it wouldn't kill me. I'd learned the cut of that weapon, survived it, and now I held the stitches of my own healing in my hands. Let the rest of the world wonder how a man can endure betrayal and still stand tall. I discovered the answer. We keep breathing, keep hammering nails into souls, keep marking days off the calendar until one day we look around and realize the burden has become just a little lighter. I closed my eyes. My breathing slowed, and the cabin filled with the sound of wind rustling through the pines. No words left to say, no final accusations to hurl, just the steady beat of my heart, reminding me that I was still alive. And that was enough.